Okay, let's try this again because the other recording disappeared. How is everyone? This is Phil, and today we're going to be talking about Sophocles. This is the first video lesson on Sophocles. The next one will break it down a little bit as far as the questions that are in the textbook. But this lesson is just to get you kind of warmed up, understand who Sophocles was, this play Antigone, and all of that. Okay, so that's what we're going to be focusing on. And here is a little slideshow that is actually coming from a friend, Danny Wood, teacher Danny Wood. And we're going to analyze Antigone, some of the themes in it, and some of the stuff that we need to focus on because those are the questions that will be on your exam. So context, well, Sophocles was the author. He lived in between 496 and 406 BC. He was a playwright and statesman, so he worked in the government. Only 7 of his 123 plays still exist, but he was very well loved, guys. He was like the Spielberg of the time. Like everything that he made, people went out to watch in the Greek theater. And he won many of the festivals. I think I read somewhere that he either was like #1 or #2 at the most. And he wrote 3 plays based on the Greek tragic hero of Oedipus. And we talked a little bit about Oedipus a few years ago when we did the Greek mythology. Remember, Oedipus tore out his own eyes. And these plays were not written in chronological order, but it's important to know what's going on here with Oedipus because Antigone is a continuation of this story. Oedipus was this guy who arrived in Thebes. He frees the city from a curse, becomes king, and marries the queen, who was recently widowed after the murder of the king. Later, Oedipus learned that he is the son of the murdered king and his new wife. And this was all through kind of a comedy of errors, but it's really tragic. Realizing that he has unwittingly fulfilled a curse, because at the beginning, the oracle tells him this, and he doesn't really understand it. You're going to kill your father and marry your mother. No, but he does. And yes, he blinds himself at the end and becomes a wanderer. Imagine. Um, and then we have Oedipus at Colonus. So Oedipus, after years as a vagrant, arrives in Colonus, accompanied by his daughter Antigone. He has become a quiet spiritual man who has resigned to his fate and focused on protecting Thebes and those members of his family who he deems worthy. The play ends with his death as Oedipus's daughter Antigone moves to claim her fate in Thebes. So, in Antigone is when we get the end of this story. Okay, this is almost like the Godfather trilogy, or I don't know, the Star Wars trilogy. It builds one after the other. The audiences witness the final fruition of the curse that plagues Oedipus's family. His son dies in battle while fighting on opposing sides for the kingship of Thebes, and Antigone hangs herself. So later, when we actually get to the story breakdown, you'll see exactly how that happens and how Antigone has this really difficult decision to make about honoring her dead brother. So some of the context is that, okay, Greeks didn't consider plays to be just entertainment. It was kind of a religious rite. And the plays were presented outdoors in arenas and held thousands of people. And attending these plays was a civic duty. Okay, so drama was an integral part of Greek culture and helped give the people shared identities. And Sophocles emerged as the first place winner in many playwright competitions, only second to the other playwright of the era, Aeschylus and Euripides. Male actors played all the characters and wore masks because women could not be actresses at the time. So the men played the women and the men. And there was a Greek chorus, okay, which when you read, if you have a chance to read a little bit of Antigone, and I hope you do, guys, it's not very long and it's nice to read at least a little bit. It's a pretty fast story. Um, and they sang, but also told a little bit, like they spoke directly to the audience. They were like the fourth wall. They would break the fourth wall and speak directly to the audience. This is what we call in theater the fourth wall, because in a stage you have the left side, the right side, you have the back side, which is the stage. And the fourth wall is what we call facing the audience. And when you're in a theater, the actors have to pretend that the audience is not there. They can only interact with themselves. So the fourth wall, when we say to break the fourth wall, is to talk directly to the audience. And it happens in theater and in movies sometimes, because in movies too, you have to pretend the camera is not there. You can't look directly in the camera. So he was very much involved in Athenian politics, and he helped kind of shape democracy as it was defined. And Antigone questions what makes rebellions against governments just, and to what extent citizens are meant to obey those who make the laws. So in the next video, we'll talk a little bit about that. Like, when is it right to break a law? How far would you go for your family, for your friends, or anyone like that? Okay, this is part of what makes this play very interesting, and the themes still resonate today. All citizens were not equal in ancient Greece, as we all know. I think that was one of our first essay questions when we did Greek mythology, right? When we read about what's her name now? Oh my goodness, Pandora. Remember Pandora's box? Women and slaves were not considered citizens, and Sophocles portrays Antigone as the true moral compass of the play. So she's considered one of the strongest female characters developed in ancient literature. So it's interesting, as I was reading this, I was really surprised of how strong she was and how her sister eventually becomes strong in the play. The main characters, we have Haman. He's the son of Creon and engaged to Antigone, and Creon is the authorized king of Thebes. And he is not happy with one of the brothers, one of Oedipus's brothers, and because he fought against him. So he lays his body out for the crows to pluck, and Antigone is not happy with this. She wants to bury her brother, but this goes against the decree of the king. Tiresias is an old blind prophet and advisor. The chorus are just the Greek chorus. They kind of advise the king, but also speak directly to the audience. Ismene, and I'm probably pronouncing all these names wrong, sorry. Antigone's timid sister, but who comes out strong. And Antigone, which is Oedipus's determined daughter. She's very determined to really honor her brother. She's the protagonist of the play. She defies the law that she believes is unjust. So that becomes a main theme of the story. When is a law unjust? She's proud, she's defiant, and she's very headstrong. Creon is portrayed as the antagonist. Okay, he's a little arrogant, he's very proud, he's very stubborn. Ismene is the sister, okay, and she's reluctant to help Antigone, but like I said, there's a little twist there. She's loyal, honest, but hesitant a little bit. Haman is the son. He's compassionate, level-headed, but also very anguished by what's going on because he's supposed to marry one of these daughters. And the prophet, he tells Creon about his fate. He says, hey, this is what's going to happen to you. And always listen to the fates when it comes to Greek mythology. They are usually correct. And the chorus just gives narration, okay? They're very observant, very judgmental, and they tell the audience what they should be thinking. And this play is a tragedy, okay, because it deals with tragic events. It does not have a happy ending. And it's a linear plot. So the action happens, chronologically, one thing after the other. And like in any story, there's going to be an introduction, there's going to be a rising action, the things that happen to get us to the climax, which is the highest emotional point where the main characters have to make the toughest decisions or deal with the hardest struggle, right? And then we get to the falling action and resolution. And here we have a little bit of that in the breakdown. So it begins with Polynices and Eteocles are killed in the battle. So we learn that at the start, Creon says that Polynices cannot be buried because he fought against the city. Antigone defies Creon, and she's sentenced to live burial. Okay, so she's going to be kind of stuck inside of a cave, but she ends up committing suicide. Haman and Eurydice commit suicide, so a lot of people died. Creon laments his decisions, and the chorus warns against pride and arrogance. Okay, we'll do a little bit more of a breakdown next video. Themes. Well, courage, conviction. Conviction means standing for what you believe. Devotion versus duty. That's another one that's very important, right? Should we follow what the law says? Should we follow what the state says? That's duty, but also devotion to a cause. Inflexibility versus stubbornness. We see this in the king. He's inflexible, and it really becomes his downfall. And here you can read some of this on the slide. The first one about Antigone, her unbending devotion. Ismene illustrates the internal struggle that arises when spiritual devotion is against loyalty to the government. Creon is the source of Ismene's call to civic duty, unbending in his values. We talked about that just now. And Antigone's courage is based on her conviction. Okay, and Antigone's fate reflects the tragic curse of her father Oedipus. Even as the chorus applauds Antigone for trying to take her fate into her own hand, it understands that she will ultimately pay for her father's ordeal. So the curse of the father is met upon the daughter this time. And Ismene's warning to remember her place as a woman or risk punishment is telling when later Creon seems even more determined to punish Antigone when he demands he will never let some woman beat us down. So there's a lot of sexism there. And then we do have flexibility versus stubbornness. Neither Antigone nor Creon show flexibility in the play. Okay, but maybe one of these is correct, that maybe I should not be flexible about this, because Creon is very stubborn. Okay, and they kind of show him as portray him as being above the gods, and this is not cool. Okay, and hubris is excessive pride, believing you're the best. Think Donald Trump. he's the best at everything. And sometimes hubris serves you well. A lot of very successful people have some hubris because they need it in order to get to the top, but humility is also important once you're up there. Symbolism. We got burials. That's the main visual of the play, because should this brother be buried or not? Should we leave him outside? So it's respectful, right? To bury somebody, to just leave a body there is something that's considered very, very disrespectful in that culture and in our culture also. There's birds. Birds appear in the play symbolically as fierce scavengers, protectors, and agents of prophecy. Chorus mentions that since Polynices' body is left in the open, his corpse will be torn apart by birds. The guard also paints a vivid picture of Antigone as looking like a bird. So use a lot of this imagery of bird. And usually black birds like crows or ravens are symbols of bad news. Bad things are going to happen. Motifs. In a literary work, a motif can be seen as an image, sound, action, or other figure that has symbolic significance, is recurrent, and contributes towards the development of a theme. Motif and theme are linked in a literary work, but there's a difference between them. In a literary piece, a motif is a recurrent image, idea, or symbol that develops or explains the theme, while a theme is a central idea or message. So think, um, for example, in trying to give you a good example of motifs. Well, one that's used a lot is like the Christ image, right? So, whenever you see in movies somebody that's say a savior of someone, usually they have their arms open. If anybody watched Batman versus Superman, there was a scene where Superman comes down from the sky and he has his arms open like Jesus. So, this is supposed to be a motif, a symbolism of he is the savior, but he's a tormented savior in these movies because he sees that people don't trust him, people don't know who he is, he's an alien, he's alone. So the director of that movie tried to make him like a Jesus Christ figure because Jesus Christ was also very tormented, he was also very alone, nobody really understood him completely. So that's a connection between Superman and Christ. So motifs you see everywhere. You see them following characters. If you look at Star Wars, I'm using popular culture, guys, so that you can kind of connect it more. But in Star Wars, usually the bad guys wear a lot of dark clothes, capes, masks to hide themselves because they can't really be themselves anymore once they're in the dark side. So we have a lot of imagery with masks covering someone's true self. So much so that when Kylo Ren in the new movies, when he becomes good, he throws away the mask. Also, Darth Vader, spoilers, when he becomes good again, he's released from the dark side. He takes away the Darth Vader mask. He takes it off, and you can see his face. So these are motifs, of covering, of not being able to show your true self. Um, some of the motifs in Antigone, we got the razor's edge, illustrates agony. Unconsumed sacrifice displays the rottenness of leaving this body out there by itself. Dirt represents devotion, being able to bury somebody. Ships represents the steadiness or a peaceful state. Tiresias advises Creon that there's still time to avoid tragedy when cautioning that his luck is once more on fate's razor edge. It's a precarious position. Many characters, metaphoric reference to ships. Okay, so we have a lot of ships being used in the dialogue. After much tossing on our ship of state, many references to man sailing the stormy seas. So a ship in the sea can be calm, but it can also be tormented. Unconsumed sacrifices are sacrifices and prayers offered to the gods which are not accepted. So this represents a little bit of the rottenness in the city because this man puts himself above the gods. And Antigone casts handfuls of dirt onto her dead brother's corpse. It shows her devotion. Okay? A lot of these themes you still see in movies today. A lot of stuff comes from the Greek mythologies, guys. And we studied all this, so we made connections, remember, with superheroes of today, the hero's journey, and all these come from way back, and we just kind of repeat these stories in different ways. Antigone's motifs. Blindness comes up in both physical and abstract ways throughout the play. Tiresias is a blind prophet. Creon symbolizes blindness to his downfall. In almost every case, the incest of Oedipus and Jocasta leads to the destruction of the family tree through suicide or choice. Antigone hangs herself. Eurydice and Hamion stab themselves, and Polynices and Eteocles die fighting each other. So this is this curse that is on this family. So guys, this is the video. I hope you enjoyed it. You got a little bit of the themes and ideas of this story. I hope to have better luck with my internet and in the program to be able to do the second video, which I will just go through the book, through the play, and maybe point out some things that I feel are important as far as plot points. Until next time, I will see you. And don't forget that after that, we have The Prophet. Oh, The Prophet. That's Khalil Gibran. Sorry, one of my favorite books. The Alchemist. Okay, so we're going to be looking at The Alchemist in the next following weeks. Have a good night.